Okay. All right. So good evening to everyone. My name is Bruce Davis. I'm a registered architect, and I work with a firm called ACAI Associates. And so you'll see a little bit about ACAI as we go through the presentation. All right. All right. So tonight we'll be discussing architecture. What is it? How do you become an architect? What's a typical um, role of an architect in the design and construction industry. Well, before I get into that, just a little bit about myself. Um, I studied architecture first at Broward College. Then I transferred over to FAU where I graduated with a bachelor's degree. It's a it's a professional bachelor's where at FAU, it's an accredited program which allows you, once you graduate, you can start testing. So you can get hired, get experience as an architect, and then start testing for the exams. And one of the things I always put on the screen here is just so you know that architects has another side. We have a different life. We actually have hobbies. So one of my hobbies here is flight simulator. And so that's something I love to do. I love anything dealing with aviation. And if any of your students who's on the chat at the moment, if you also have this hobby, flight simulator, it would be good if you could just put something in the chat so I could know that. Another thing that I like to do, I like to sing. Sometimes I sing at church, maybe like once a month. So those are the things that I do outside of architecture. So I'm an associate principal with ACAI, and my specialty as an architect is healthcare. So ACAI Associates, it's a firm that does architecture for healthcare, for municipal projects, for various types of projects, higher education. And so that's one of the things within architecture. You can be an architect with a specialty, or whether it's residential or if it's commercial and retail types of projects. Those are the options that are available to you. So at ACAI, this is the image that you see on the screen is one of the projects that we did years ago. So we are a full design, architectural, and engineering firm. So the engineering portion, what we do is we consult that out to other companies. So the architect brings the whole package together, and it's a teamwork effort to put a project together. And so we consult with either structural engineers, civil engineers, different parties that are needed to put a project together. And some of the services that we at ACAI provide, architecture, virtual design, BIM management, landscape architecture, interior design, construction management. So a few different things that we offer, a few different types of services at ACAI. Some of the markets or specialties that we offer is education, particularly higher education, healthcare and research, could be transportation, government, or commercial. This is just a snapshot of some of the images of some of the clients that we work for and we develop projects for. So as an architect, we're hired by different companies to do different projects. And so whether it's private, municipal, those are the different types of projects you can be involved in. Okay. So some of the things we'll touch on today is architecture. What is it? Some of the skills that are required and educational requirements to become an architect, some of the career options that are available to you. We'll also touch on architectural design and how exactly do an architect come up with a design for a house or building or whatever it is. How do we go about that? We'll talk about the design process and look at a few examples. All right. So I'm very excited to be presenting to you about this. So what is architecture? And if any of you have any thoughts of what architecture is, you can also type in the chat. So architecture is the art of creating design and built solutions that satisfy a need. So architecture is someone has a need, whether it's a place someone has a need to be housed, a place to live, or a place to be educated, or a place to go and shop, those are different basic needs, different needs that we have as human beings. And so what we do as architects is we help to develop that need from an idea, a thought, into something that's design oriented that a contractor can build. Architecture involves all of the STEM disciplines. So whether it's science, technology, engineering, and maths, those are all important as an architect. It involves teamwork, whether it's teamwork with each other in the architectural office, with the consultants that helps us put the projects together, with the owner, a contractor, it's all teamwork. So I encourage you at this moment in school, you know, always try your best to do, be a good team player, and then do your part when it comes to team projects. I know sometimes we shy away from team projects in school and we like to do it on our own, but architecture, it involves a team effort. Time and resource management, because everything that we do has a deadline, and you experience that currently in school with some of the projects that you have due. You have a deadline as to when it needs to be submitted. So time management, resource management has to do with the materials and the resources that we use to design and construct our buildings. We want to be conscious of reserving the materials. Active listening, problem solving, and paying attention to detail. So one of the things I have on this screen is just a graphic that shows you some of what I discussed, is that architecture starts as an idea, and there's some amount of research that has to happen to develop what's the appropriate solution for this idea. Then we develop concepts, develop the design, where we traditionally call it blueprints, although it's not blueprints anymore. We develop the construction drawings, and then that is delivered to the contractor who builds the project for the owner. Okay. So to become an architect, so you first start with getting a higher education, a 5-year bachelor's degree, and then there's a certain number of hours that you need as work experience. So it's currently 3,740 hours. And so what that does, it makes sure that those who are becoming architects are exposed to different areas of the practice, and before they actually get approved to do their exams. One of the key things after developing building up, accumulating the amount of hours, the exams that you need to take as an architect is practice management, project management, programming and analysis, project planning and design, project development and documentation, and then construction evaluation. And so basically, as an architect, you have to know a lot about different things. So even though we're not the physical builders of the building, even though we're not the users of the building, we have to learn about different components and be able to put it all together to come up with a good solution. So those are the 5 or 6 exams, that you have to take as an architect and pass. And then as part of your experience, there's certain key areas that they look to make sure that you get exposed to during licensure. Okay, so this is an exercise I've done before. So if you think of architecture, you try to make it simple, try to simplify it. So if you think of a project, the first thing you do is, one of the first things you do is think of what components are part of this project and what rooms would be part of this project. So here on the screen, it has just a list of room names. And if anybody could type in the chat, just let me know what you think this building type is. Let's give it 1 second. And can anybody tell me what building type you think this is? You have a bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, laundry. Okay, you're correct. So it's a house. Yeah, so first off, you break it down to the lowest common denominator, simplify it. So it's correct. So it's a house. And so you start with the list of rooms, and that's called developing a program, a space program. It's whatever building type. If it's a church, start by just writing out what rooms need to be part of this project. And then the next step is to figure out what's the relationship of each room to the other. So how do I want to navigate through this room? Which rooms are important to be next to other rooms? So say for instance, the bedrooms, you call this a bubble diagram. And so the bedrooms would have some connections to the bathrooms. The dining rooms might be a centrally located area where from the dining room you can go to one wing, maybe that has the bedrooms, or maybe another area that has the kitchen. And so that's all part of the bubble diagram and starting to figure out where things are going to fit without even thinking of the design itself. The design and the exterior of the building, that's all the container. But the first step is figuring out what's going to be part of it. So the next image is going to show you just how this relationship works out in a floor plan. So this is a 3D, it's just sort of a cutaway floor plan that's rendered that shows you the relationship that was shown in the bubble diagram. So you have your bathroom, so you enter the house, you have a foyer where you may have a guest bathroom off of that space, or maybe a place where you can hang your coats. Then you go to the dining area, living, and then off to the left, you have your bedrooms, your kitchen, your laundry, your storage area. And as I present this, you could kind of think of the project that you'd have to develop. And one of the first steps as well you'd have to do is start thinking of what spaces would have to be part of this project. Um, Another quick one, this one is office, and you could feel free to type in the chat. You have offices, you have book shelving stacks, you have study areas, check-in. What do y'all think this one might be? Any guesses? You have lecture, conference. Oh, okay. Somebody guessed right. Library. Yeah, so that's correct. So this is a library. Yep. All right. So similar to the other step, you first come up with a list of spaces, try to position them relatively in terms of what needs to be next to which for adjacencies or make sense. Another level is where the size of the shape sometimes suggests the size or the importance of the space. So an office, if it's smaller, might be obviously smaller than a study area, which would need to accommodate more people. So that's another level of the bubble diagram that we sometimes use to show spaces. So here is it laid out, overlaid above the rendering. And so those spaces are laid out into what makes sense as far as the arrangement. So you enter, you have a check-in area, and that's one component of one of the projects is a part about security. So a check-in area provides security and also information. So that's double duty for the check-in area. Lecture, bookshelves, office. So it's all arranged based on what makes sense. All right. So here is just some images of what I talked about earlier, where an architect can specialize in different types of projects. So it could be, worship spaces, it could be residential, healthcare, um, retail, museums. And so you could be do different specialties as an architect. Convention centers. And this one on the top is an image of the Broward County Convention Center that's being renovated. Theme parks, because somebody has to design this, Disney. Transportation, so that's another area you can be as an architect. All right, next image. All right, so we talked about this image here is at Broward Health in downtown Fort Lauderdale. This was a project that I did a couple of years ago, and it was a NICU, neonatal intensive care. So as I said, I'm specialized in healthcare architecture. So the work that I do relates to hospitals or medical facilities. So this was a very nice project because I like what it does for the users, how it takes care of babies and families. That's the part about architecture that I like. These are some of the interior images on the bottom right of one of the patient rooms, that shows where the baby would be during that time in the hospital. The one at the top is an equipment replacement. So in a hospital, you have different types of rooms. You have the rooms that you generally would see, if you go and visit somebody, if you're not doing well in a patient room. But then you have surgery rooms, you have different types of procedure rooms that are all part of the hospital as well. So it could be pretty exciting as a healthcare architect. As an architect, you could do landscape architecture. That's another field of architecture that you can get into if you're interested in open areas, outdoors. And what I'll do, you'll get a copy of this presentation to, and so embedded, I have a few different links that would take you to information. So this one would take you to, the day in the life of a landscape architect and what a landscape architect does. So that would be helpful. This image you're seeing is of Young Circle in Hollywood. And so a landscape architect would deal with anything that's outside the building. And that creates, the landscape architect creates an experience, creates a feeling, creates pathways. Um, if anybody on the chat, have you ever been to Young Circle? I've been there a couple of times looking at, I think, for concerts and stuff, and it's a very nice space. And there's just something about being in the outdoors and being in nature sometimes, and to create a nice park like this in a city is a very nice thing. All right, so this as well is just a couple items, a few other career paths that you can take as an architect. You can be a technical architect, design architect, where you primarily come up with the concepts and the schemes for what the project is going to look like. BIM manager, specifications writer, that's a lot more detail, where it's getting down into the different codes and the information regarding all the different parts that are part of the building. So there's very different fields, very different various jobs you can get as an architect. So there's a lot of options out there. So I encourage you to, when you get a chance, you could click this link and you could go and see what some of the other information is about it. All right. So the basics about architecture and the drawings that we put together, you saw the bubble diagrams a second ago. So what I'm showing you here on the screen now are the floor plans. So these are the different components that an architect would be responsible for putting together. The floor plan, just imagine wherever you're at right now, just if you take something and just cut, say 4 feet high, straight across and look back down. So that's the floor plan that you would be seeing, where you would see the doors, you'll see the rooms, you'll see the fixtures in the bathrooms. And so this, at the end of the day, what we try to do is to put these ideas on paper so that it could be understood to a point where it can be built. So that's what the floor plan does. And that's primarily what you see in the construction drawings, is a floor plan. Building section is the building. If you take maybe a big saw and just cut it vertically and look back towards it, you'll see the different floor levels. You'll see maybe in this particular building, you have underground parking. You could see the little people that's represented for scale. And so usually once you see people in a rendering or in a drawing, it's usually for scale. So you get a sense of how big the spaces are. Bottom left is a ceiling plan, reflected ceiling plan. And what that is it's the reverse of a floor plan, in that instead of looking downward, you're looking up, and you get to see where the ceiling fan is, where the light fixtures are, and where any mechanical vents are. So in this particular drawing, you're seeing the light fixtures that are above. Seeing the light fixture, you're seeing this different patterning on the ceiling. And then one of the last ones is the elevation. So that's where you stand outside of a building or something and you look back towards it straight on. and you get to detail, you get to see the profile of the building. And so all these things are communication tools, just like you would do with if you're doing a novel, or if you're doing some sort of written document or instruction manual. So if any of you ever had an experience putting a piece of furniture or something together, architecture is kind of like that, in that we prepare instructions for the builder to put together, just that it's on a much larger scale. Yeah, so it's all right. So the next thing here is being a student. It's a wonderful time for you all, because a lot of these programs that we use, you can get for free. And so I do encourage you all to, if you don't have them yet, and you like drawings, you like architecture, certain things about it, even for your projects, you can go to these websites and download the free version of the software. So one of them is Autodesk, Autodesk, AutoCAD, Revit. Revit is one of the main ones that we use to present, to put the drawings together. Navisworks, that's another software we use. So the main one that we use at our company is Revit, and we also use AutoCAD. Tinkercad, that's another one that I was told about. So this one, you can do a lot of modeling and things like that, to create shapes, to create different things in architecture. All right. Another one is SketchUp that you can use. And so SketchUp, it's also free, and I have the link here for you to access it if you want. And so SketchUp is a quick tool where you can model different shapes, you can model different elements as part of your projects as well. So these are some of the design software that we use and that is available to students for free. The free versions are available. All right, the next one is some of the resources that you can use. So in here, embedded in the presentation, I have some links to a few websites that you can go to, and it has some good information for you about architecture, about how much architects make, salaries, what we do as architects, the duties, the work environment. So these are good informational websites that if any one of you are interested, even have an inclination about, to learn more about what architecture is, you can go to these websites. All right. All right. So this section now is just running through quickly what's involved in the design process. And so this middle portion. After we know there's an idea, then you have the design process that happens. So the research section, that's usually, we call that pre-design. So that's before we start putting pen to paper, before we start figuring things out. Programming and schematics, programming is pre-design. Schematics, when you start laying things out, that's actually getting into design. And so this bubble diagram is similar to what I showed you at the beginning with the library and the house. So this is a similar concept where the sizes of the bubbles is representative of the sizes of the spaces and the importance, and then the arrows kind of represent the adjacencies of things. So this particular one is an office building. This tool, so the bubble diagram is one. This other tool is called a adjacency matrix, and it does similar, where you have color coding to indicate which spaces should be next to which spaces. So a lobby should be adjacent to a reception. If you go further down, a lobby versus a cafeteria can be nearby. The light blue means nearby. So this is just another tool, and you have the names of some of the other functions, the square footage of the spaces and things like that. So different tools. The typical stage of the design process, we talked about pre-design, and then design. On the front end of design is schematic design. And that during that phase of design, that's where the scope of the project and the cost gets defined to some level of detail. Um, Construction drawings gets completed during the design phase, and at the end of design, the project is submitted for permit, because each thing that we design needs to be submitted to whichever city or jurisdiction is responsible for reviewing and approving the document. So whether it's the city of Coral Springs, whether it's the county, the state, and that's the level of oversight and review before the project is approved for construction. So during post-design is the construction phase. That's when the contractor actually starts building the project. Okay. Site analysis. So this is part of the early design or pre-design phase. And so this is where we start learning information about the project site that we're going to build on. And so this is a tool you might use as part of your design, site analysis. What it does, if you think of where you live right now, because I know that's very familiar to each of us. If you think of where you live, what site analysis does, you step outside of the house and you think of what's next to you, what's closest to you, where are the noises coming from, where is the main street. So for instance, in this one, the red jagged line, that's saying where in respect to this site, there's a railroad in that direction. So where can we expect noises to come from? Where is the main path for pedestrian traffic? And how are people going to get to my building? What are the good views from my site that I need to look out for? And then things like the sun, what's the angle of the sun and how is it going to affect my building? So there's a lot of things that you think of even before you start designing, as far as how would this site that my project is going to be, how is it going to impact me? And so you'll have some of these slides as part of the presentation about what's involved in site analysis. And that helps you to better plan your building in many ways. All right. So these are just a few examples of the site analysis. All right. So some of the tools that we use for site analysis are Google Maps or Google Earth. And so a lot of times we use that before we can get a chance to go to the project site. So this is something else you can also download. There's an app, or you can download it for free. So say, which one? Let me go to, let's see, Coral Springs site. So you want to go to Coral Springs High School and take a look at that. So with Google Earth, what it does, it takes you right to the location of whatever site you're looking at. So it's Coral Springs High School, for instance. And with this tool, you can do, can be 3D. You can do street views. You know, just drop the guy down somewhere, and you could do street views. We can move along the road and see different things. And you could also take measurements. So what you can do as part of your projects too is use Google Earth and see what you can figure out about the area around you. So that's one good tool you can use, Google Earth. And there's different features here. You can do take measurements and things like that. You see, say you want to measure like a parking spot, you could also do that in Google Earth, right? Go next one. All right. So another thing we do as part of pre-design is go to the jurisdiction that the project is located in. So Broward County Property Appraiser website, and you'll see a screenshot of that. So that's where you could get information about the property detailed, the ownership of the site, the size, the cost, the zoning, you know, whether it's a land use that's allowed to have a school or residential, different things like that. Or you can go to the county website to learn more about the project. So this was a screenshot pertaining to Google Earth. This is pertaining to the Broward County Property Appraiser, which is another tool we use for for free design. You could get different information about the project. And then this is the city of Margate website, where you could get information about the zoning or the code information about that particular city. So whichever city you live in, that city has a website where you could also look up the zoning and code information about that city. Because what the cities do is they designate land use within your city. So they, over the years and way back, and it gets updated. So there's plans and maps that determines where residences should go. So residential zone or a commercial zone where you might have light industrial, maybe small warehouses. You might have a retail type zone where you have shops or places like that. So what that zoning does, it helps to create a good mix of compatible uses. So it would be odd to have an industrial plant or something like that in the middle of a residential district, because traffic, noise, pollution, things like that. And so that's where zoning comes in. And that's why one reason why you don't see those type of things happen, because it's been determined, what uses are compatible with each other. So those are all things that we have to review as architects going in. All right. So with the time that I have left, I have just a couple project examples that I wanted to show you how we go about doing that. So the first one is a smaller project. It's a renovation. And so top left, you can see the room names. So in this example, it's a clinic. It's called a physician timeshare suite. And so here you have exam rooms, physician offices, you have janitor's closet, and you have a column that shows the square footage. You have a column that shows how many of that particular room, and then you have a total square feet. So each room has a certain set square footage, and then when you add that all up, you get a total square footage for the project. Bottom right is an example of a schedule for this particular project, design schedule. So we had schematic design, design development, and construction documents. And as I said before, everything has a timeline. Everything has a date. Let's see. Okay, all right, so let me. Okay, so this image, this was the first pass, the first schematic layout for this project. So, we use some simple color coding to show where the physician offices are and what's the shared spaces in the business office and things like that, waiting room. So this was the first scheme. And in architecture, sometimes you do things 2, 3, 4 times before you come up with the right layout. So next, we presented this to the owner. The owner loved it initially, but then 1 week after, the owner said they needed something else. They needed us to change the design. So we went back to the drawing board and we came up with a different layout. So this one is the one that we ended up designing, and it's going to be submitted for permit. So it's the same quantity of rooms. It's just a different layout that seems to make more sense for them. So for what this is, it's an office suite for physicians where they would timeshare. So they would rent for a portion of the week, a portion of the day, a quadrant of this office. So the blue is one physician, the yellow is another physician, the green is another physician, and the orange is another physician. And then the common area is the unshaded stuff. All right. So this is just one picture of the floor plan, how it turned out, and you could kind of see how it kept a lot of the qualities from the sketches as far as the layout of the exam rooms, the waiting room. So I had an L shape in the middle and it stayed that way. And then the exam rooms around the perimeter. Okay. All right, so this one I'm going to show you quickly is another project type. The last one was medical. This one is a community facility. So it's YMCA, it's pools, it's a lot of things. So this one was done, I think it was completed just a couple of years ago. And so the city of Hallandale um, needed to renovate and expand on their recreational facility. And so ACAI was hired to do the job. And so existing, this on screen is what it looked like. So they had some baseball diamonds, they had a smaller swimming facility, tennis courts, and it was very limited as far as what they had. Um, so it was over a number of years that this actually happened, because with community or with municipal project, there's a lot of community involvement that happens. And so there's a lot of input that needs to come from the neighborhood. So there was different studies that were done over the years, different input that we got from the community. And then this slide is just showing you the team that was involved in the project. And so, as I said, teamwork is important at throughout the whole thing. So you have, who was the structural engineer? You had the landscape and civil consultant, MEP, and then you had the city, who was the owner for this project. So it went through a few different iterations before the final design was selected. And this project went through a few of those design phases that I talked about: programming, schematic design, design development, and construction documents. This is a high level view of the schedule that was done, similar to the schedule that I showed you before. And a lot of what I'm presenting to you is some components that you would have to do as part of your final deliverable for this project too. So, um, so some of this would be helpful to you as you move forward. Programming, we talked about programming before, where for this particular house, they listed the functions for this particular building, sorry. So there was going to be a field house, and they listed the functions, how many people it needed to accommodate, and things like that. So that's another aspect of programming. The room listings, I showed you some of that before. You have the name of the space, whether it's a bedroom, bathroom, things like that. Your approximate size, where it's located, those kind of things. And then the bubble diagram, which you saw earlier. So this was an actual bubble diagram that was done for this project. And it kind of helped to arrange the different spaces in the building that was finally built. On the left, you can see the bubble diagram. And on the right, you can see the actual floor plan, where towards the right hand of the screen is where you enter the building into the main lobby. You have check-in, you have check-in, you have some seating areas where you could wait maybe, and then you have wellness, you have a gym. So you could see the larger rectangle towards the middle ended up remaining there as the gym. And then you had some ancillary uses around the perimeter. Toilet rooms, you can't forget those, family rooms. And so because you start with a simpler level, you don't forget, you helps you to not forget anything. So you start with the list of names, the program, and then in simple form, you do the bubble diagram before you start thinking of what's the building going to look like. That could come later on. All right. And we'll just scroll through some of these other images. This is another project that you saw before, which is the Broward Community College Health Sciences Simulation Lab. And in this one, similar process, but it also does include some additional floor plans too, so you could see what it turned out to be. So this is the floor plan of the actual building that shows some of the stairways. You could see some of the furniture, but this is a lot of detail, and this is high level because we need to be able to communicate, clearly what's going to be part of the project and things like that. You have some exterior elevations of the building that shows you what it's going to look like from the outside, and some section drawings that shows you what the stair is going to look like and things like that. And then these are a few photos of the building being built during construction. Yeah. Right. And that's that. That's the actual building. These are some of the rooms within the building where nurses, future nurses, and future physicians train. All right. And so these were some of the questions that are presented at the beginning, and hopefully y'all were able to track them as I went through the presentation. And one of the important things, as Jacob said at the beginning too, is that, you know, each student needs to answer the questions and provide the responses to your teacher, just so that we know that you were engaged and that you took away something from the presentation. Okay. All right, I think that's the end of the presentation. And let me stop recording.